So let's kick off. So before we get into the full panel, I just really love to acknowledge the traditional owners on the land of which we're standing. And I'm here in Australia, and this is something that we do. For those of you who are not from Australia, this is something we do at the beginning of meetings. So I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land which I'm standing. I'm standing on the land of the Kulin Nation, and I pay my respect to their elders, past, present, and emerging. And the people of the Kulin Nation and the Aboriginal people have been looking after the land here for over 60,000 years. So it's an incredible feat, and I thank them. I'd also love to acknowledge any First Nations people who are joining the webinar today. So welcome. So now I get to introduce the panelists, and I'll introduce them fully at the start of each session. I'll introduce myself. My name is Jess Dart. I'm the founder and what I'm called the Chief Evaluator of Clear Horizon Consulting. And we're based in Melbourne here in Australia. And we're all about using our nerdy evaluation skills to support people creating positive impact in the world. And we have this academy where we run training and run seminars like this. And the academy is all about translating our knowledge and skills from the initiatives we're working with into practical learning opportunities for others who work in the sector. And I've had the pleasure of co-creating quite a few of the courses. So if any of you have done any of our courses, poor you have seen my face rather a lot. So apologies for that. So we've got things, 3 sessions going on today. So in the first session, that's number 1, we'll be talking to the fantastic Kate McKegg give us a wave, Kate. I know you're here. Say hello. Kia ora from New Zealand.
Kia ora koutou from New Zealand.
And we'll do a proper introduction of you a little later. And we're also in session 2, we're going to be talking to Lily O'Flynn, Elise Barkley and Fraukia Jogsman about the transformative power of place-based approaches and what we've been learning about them. Can you give us a bit of a wave? Fraukia, Lily, Elise, there, panel number 2. So
hello.
they're here. Hi, love to see your faces. And we'll learn about you more at the beginning of that session. And in the third session, last but definitely not least, we have the fantastic Penny Hawkins and Zazie Tolma, who are joining us from Europe. What time is it there? Go and tell me the truth. What time is it?
No, it's only 10 a.m. for me.
10 a.m. Cool.
Earlier,
so
earlier for Penny.
And what time is it, Penny, for you? Oh, she's got a mute on. Well, we'll assume it's so early in the morning.
Sorry. It's 9 a.m. in Scotland.
Oh, Scotland. Brilliant. Coming from Scotland. So we're coming from all over the place for this session. That's really exciting that we've managed the time zones. Okay, so yes. So as I said before, this is a seminar sort of form of Zoom, which you may not be used to. You'll see the chat function at the bottom. Feel free, the panelists can see that chat and each other can see that. Feel free to say hello, so you navigate your way there. We've also got this Q&A function, which is really, really good because you can put a question in there to the panel, or if you see somebody else's question that you think is really cool, like it and it will go to the top. And I'll make a point of really making sure that we address the questions that you vote up. Okay, so that's a bit of power you have. And feel free, any of the participants, to say hello in the chat function now. Say hello to us so that we know you're here, because we can't actually see you. So it's all a bit, you know, we believe you're there. We know you're there, really. Anyway, okay. So with that, I might start and move in to the first session, which is with Kate McKegg. So come and join me in the spotlight, Kate. Come and hop up here. And hopefully, can we make Kate a spotlight as well as me now? Yep. So I've had the great pleasure of working with Kate a few times. And Kate McKegg is an independent consultant and a pragmatic academic. And she's also the co-founder of the Developmental Evaluation Institute and the director of the Knowledge Institute and a member of the Kinnect group. Welcome, Kate. And so we can get to know you, could you tell me something about the place that you call home and what you love about it?
Oh, Jess, thank you. Hey, look, the place I call home, I'm a 5th generation New Zealander. So my ancestors actually immigrated from Scotland, where Penny is, Ireland and England, and they immigrated in the early and mid 1800s to New Zealand. So I guess most of my family memories and stories are here in New Zealand. And my great loves about being here are the place. It's the sea, it's the beaches, it's the mountains, it's the bush, the lakes, and they're all very accessible and reasonably free of people. So I love the no people thing. And having a beach to yourself is something that's actually still possible in New Zealand. I also love that we're in the South Pacific. And we have this magnificent navigational Pacific history, and our culture, even though many people are not quite there in thinking this, but our culture is actually grounded in Maori and Pacific ways of being and seeing the world. And that's become part of who we are as well, even if we don't know it yet. So I love that about New Zealand.
Thank you, Kate. And I have been actually to Kate's house. It's really gorgeous. So if you ever get a chance to go to there regularly, isn't it? It's a really awesome spot. But let's move on to the topic that we're going to talk about today. And so this is all about developmental evaluation. So, I mean, not everybody knows what it is. So could you tell us what it is, like a definition, and how it differs from other types of evaluation to kick us off?
Thanks, Jess. Yeah, well, sometimes I don't even know what it is, quite honestly. So it looks different in every case. But I guess the definition that we typically work with is that it supports innovation and it allows us to explore the development and adaptation of things that people are trying to do to change the world in complex and dynamic environments. I guess it combines the rigor of evaluation, like that rigor of evaluation is still fully embedded in it. Because, and when I say that, it's about bringing that evidence together with values, with uncertainty and adaptation and emergence and complexity. It's an evaluation practice for complexity is kind of what I would say. It's but I think, and you've said this before too, and certainly is that developmental evaluation is distinguished from other forms, such as formative and summative, by its purpose. It kind of, those other ones grew up in program evaluation, and we're now facing a need to move beyond programs, programs please no programs kind of world that we're now living in, which is this multifaceted, the need for strategies and initiatives that are complex, are going to be systems change initiatives, even global transformation is where people are trying to shoot for. And I guess that's those traditional forms of evaluation just aren't suited to that kind of context. And so DE is not a method.
It's not a method. And it's not a reflection workshop either, is it? Some people think developmental evaluations, oh, we just get together and have a reflection and we're doing DE. Is it that?
No, it's not.
Why is it not that?
It might use that. It might use reflective process and reflective practice, but it's more than that. It's defined. Its purpose is to support the development of something, and to sit alongside and support that development. So it's not fully independent like we're used to feeling in some of the research and evaluation world. It's actually there to do that support function. And I guess, it combines many methods. It's what's appropriate at the time. You bring together the skills of people that you're working with. You work as a team. DE is not a method. It is a form of evaluation. It's a practice, an evaluation practice, as I said earlier, for complexity. Oh, you're on mute, Jess.
Right, for beginners. Later, we're going to talk about systems change approaches and place-based approaches. And how does it relate to that? How does it interface?
Well, I guess the way I thought about this when I saw your question, you know, when we were thinking about this earlier, was that these approaches are generally enmeshed. Like if we're doing place-based work, we're enmeshed in complexity, with many different people kind of working together to try and develop and create change. And really what I see is DE is like the accompanist to those approaches. It actually, but it's more than that. If you have your accompanist, I can't even say that word tonight.
Accompaniment.
Yeah. If you have DE as an accompaniment to those approaches, you can really power the work being done. It can help people learn more quickly and deeply, so that they can achieve greater impact, or understand that what they're doing isn't working. So either, you know, you can power the learning that goes on in those places. DE, alongside many of those approaches, especially for those funders who are worried about taking on DE actually de-risks what people are doing.
I love that. Yeah, that is so cool, isn't it? Something that we should stress it more, isn't it? That for funders, it's a window into the messy design process, isn't it? And a report often that's describing what's going on.
And it de-risks it not just for the funders, but actually for the folks on the ground, because if they're being supported to do that evaluative thinking from the get-go, and to really question assumptions and question stakes and do some of that systemic thinking, then things can actually happen in a way that is actually going to be helpful and not harmful. And also, you know, it can either power it up or power it down, whatever is needed. It can adapt in ways that is actually going to make sense.
Now, I'm just noting we had a bit of a technical issue earlier with the chat function. We hope it's working now. So if you want to try saying hello, we can say hello to you. Back to DE though, I was just wondering, like, you said it's good for place-based and systems change approaches, but is it the only method you should use, or the only purpose would you use summative or formative evaluation as well in those? Is it all the way through? What do you think?
Yeah, well, in my experience, actually, Jess, I mean, you know, like my experience is that often at the early stages of DE, it's DE that you want in those early pre-design, design, in that early kind of when things are still forming in the context, and you're creating those containers for learning, and you're trying to create the space for that kind of way of working that's going to be different. But down the track, further down the track, in the middle and later phases of a DE, in my experience, quite often you can move into that more summative, formative space where something might have emerged that might look programmatic, or like, you know, a formed strategy. And those things actually do emerge, and people want to know that they are set up to work, and they're set up to be monitored and evaluated in more conventional ways. So it can move to that space. And often as a DE evaluator, you end up supporting too. Yeah.
Great. Just quickly, what are the outputs? People always ask me, what are the outputs from developmental evaluation? Is it this big fat impact? You know, what do people get?
Oh, outputs.
I know.
Yeah, I know. I guess in the in the DE course that Clear Horizon have developed, one of the things that we've done is we've been able to think about that in terms of 3 phases. And in that first phase, really the output is a little less tangible. Quite often it's because you're really building a container for learning and change. You're including the development of relationships that are needed for the journey. And it's important, I would stress, like 100% stress, that it's important not to rush in those early phases into developing complex evaluation plans. Oh,
that can take the whole time, isn't it? That's that was my terrible learning, that I spent the whole budget once on redoing the plan and never did any evaluation work.
And then redoing it, and then redoing it, and then redoing it, and redoing it. And you can get sucked in. It's what funders are used to. People who commission evaluation are used to a plan, some detailed plan with all those detailed costings. So you've got to resist that urge. So in that early phase, you really are, probably your outputs might be, actually you might get to a contract. you might get to some kind of understanding of the high level scope of the work. And
what about a concept paper or something like that, like a rough outline of what the evaluation might look like? And then any other products that come out, like learning briefs or things like that, little short micro reports?
Learning briefs might come out, but I guess the other things that might come out at this stage is a brief that explains and is an agreement about the principles of ways of working. It might be principles or criteria against which you want to be able to have as an overarching set for you to be able to track and monitor against over the longer term. So you're really establishing the boundaries of the work in those early phases and exploring with people what's important and what's valuable about the work. So those early phases, those outputs are, they're not your typical evaluation outputs.
Right.
You might end up with a little plan. And the little plan is usually for a short time.
Little plans and little reports. Little loops.
Little loops of and it's actually one of the ways that I've helped funders and commissioners convince them that it's okay if we just have a plan and a contract for 3 months. Let's just do this for 3 months and let's revisit it in 3 months' time, rather than trying to get us nailed down for 18 months or 2 years or 3 years.
Yeah, because you don't know what it is you're building it for yet, do you?
No idea. Yeah.
Now, I know people are really keen for examples. I've got about 2 minutes for an example now. Could you just outline in a nutshell a real example for people to make this real for people?
Is Cam able to share the slides?
Can we share the slides, Cam? Katie, I think, has got the slides.
Oh, Katie's got the slides. Yay.
We might have to do this a little quicker. Sorry, Kate.
Okay, I'll whip through it.
Having a good chat, but people do love a good example. Yeah.
Okay, so this case study is the Māori and Pacific Education Initiative, and which was funded by Foundation North in New Zealand, which is a large philanthropic organisation. And that little byline that you can see on that front page is the vision that was there for the initiative. So next slide, Cam. I'll whip through this as fast as I can. This is just some context and background, which basically said that there were nine projects funded over a long period of time. They had multi-year contracts, and it was the first significant major investment in high engagement philanthropy in New Zealand at the time. And they were guided by a deeply held set of principles that were grounded in Maori and Pacific cultures. Yeah. Next slide, Cam. So the core objective of this whole initiative was to advance Maori and Pacific Island engagement and citizenship through educational achievement. And they were really clear that evaluation had to be an appropriate fit. And they went for developmental evaluation when it was just a new thing, because it seemed to fit the kind of their needs that they were after. Yeah. So in the starting phase, again, what we did was we invested in the building of relationships in this initiative. But I guess, and just as I've said before, we did develop a set of evaluation principles that acted as criteria that incorporated Māori and Pacific cultural definitions of success in education, but we also had to speak to the funders as well. So it was a bit of a juggle, but we did develop these high-level principles and criteria that we worked with throughout. And we co-developed, if you like, the architecture of the evaluation. So that's that kind of, here's the boundaries of what it is that we are working within. And there were those 3 levels of learning as part of this evaluation. So that was our starting phase. In the middle phase was lots of cycles, little cycles of data collection.
Those are little cycles again, the little ones again. Yeah,
little cycles, layering of data, data on top of data, actually, but all kind of pointing to that objective and using those principles and criteria as our guides. And I guess the rhythm and the timing of this was very much adapted throughout to align with the project cycles and the progress that they were making. And, you know, we did develop dashboards for the projects. Dashboards were they were useful for a period, but then we stopped using them. So it wasn't that they were fixed forever. They stopped being useful towards the end. and an organisational assessment rubric, which was helpful for some of the organisations, because some of them started without even a bank account. So they were in organisational development mode as they were trying to get stuff off the ground. And I guess in this last phase of this, we moved into a more summative space, capturing learnings as well as value. And some of the outputs there were digital stories, infographics, etc. And I guess that, as you can see there, the success of the initiative has led on to a whole range of things that have occurred for the foundation, but also for the initiatives themselves. So many of them went on to get further funding from other places and to further success. Some of them didn't. Some of them didn't carry on. So that was another learning in itself. Yeah.
That's it.
That's it.
Fantastic. That was did that so fast, and I know there's probably lots of questions. We just wanted to ground it in something real. And feel free, people. I notice now we've got the chat working, and I assume that the Q&A is working as well, but I can't see. I don't think anybody's done one yet. If you have a question for Kate, can you put it on the Q&A, which is next to the chat function? So I guess I'd ask you just briefly, just to wrap that case study up, what were your biggest insights about, I mean, maybe about using developmental evaluation on that? What were the biggest insights for that case study, Kate?
I guess because it was one of the earlier ones that we undertook, it was quite some time ago that we started it, and it went over a period of quite, we were there for 4 years. One of the biggest insights was the importance of that, of not rushing at the beginning, of grounding the work in a set of trusted relationships, because the road is going to be rocky. There are going to be periods of times when people don't know, they're in flux and things aren't going as well as they'd hoped. And you fall back on relationships. You fall back on the strength and the quality of the relationships you've built to get through those rocky times. And, a Maori colleague of mine said a shortcut is a long cut in this work. And
right.
What it means is that you end up, if you take a shortcut, you're going to end up having to do something the long way round at some point and have to circle back and do it again. So, and it was a great piece of advice, and it was probably the one thing that really stood out for me.
Pace is really important, isn't it, in this stuff, to go at the pace that the community and everybody's ready to go. Don't they say you can only go at the speed of trust? Or
yeah,
it's come out for quite a lot of my examples, is the need to slow down. Maybe that's
and every review I see of a piece of DE, every review, especially with a client, with a funder of some kind, whether that's philanthropic or government, or some other kind of funder, every review says that in that DE, they have to manage this tension between the funder wanting them to go fast and the actual reality of doing the work on the ground and the need to slow down. So this is a real tension in this work. And I really acknowledge everyone that's out there trying to do it, because the funder wants you to go fast and just speed up and get things done. And so managing that is really tough.
Fantastic. Now we've actually got a couple of questions coming through the Q&A now for you. So the first one is, where do you start? What's the first thing you normally do? So maybe in this case study, where did you start?
Yeah, I guess the place to start, where did we start? I have to say that in this particular case study, we were asked in to do this work, and what we asked of the client was that we have a period that we called almost pre-scoping. So it was a bit of due diligence is what we actually called it, because it looked like a really complex initiative, and we just wanted to suss out what was going on before we actually committed to anything. So I think before you do any of this work, you need to get a full understanding of what's going, as full as you can. You can never spend, you can, it's not analysis by paralysis where you're just going to do endless needs assessments and all the rest of it. But you do need to have a good sense of what's going on the ground and what's at stake for people, and what the stakes are for the range of stakeholders that are there. you also need to know what people are expecting, and you need to spend time building relationships. And what's the authorizing environment for this work? I guess one of the things that I've stumbled across a few times now, and I've stumbled over and, you know, stubbed my toe really badly on a couple of occasions, which is understanding that the authorizing environment for decision making. So people might be really keen for DE and they're all up for this learning and this adaptation, but actually they don't have the authorizing environment for making decisions to adapt, to change, to do something different. And that just can stifle the innovation, it stifles the work. So that would be one of my, so do your assessment up front.
Well, we've had such a good chat that we've sort of run out of time, but I know you're staying on the line, aren't you, Kate? Because we've got a panel at the end. Would you mind answering the questions that participants have written in the Q&A just by typing, and we might move on? So I just want to say thank you so much. I loved chatting with you. I love talking about developmental evaluation with you. And just note, if anybody's interested in the sort of chat we've been having, that we do Kate and I together, along with Jamie Gamble, run a course on developmental evaluation.